Everyone saw him commit suicide. They saw him tear open his own throat and die. But days later the truth surfaced. It wasn't a suicide, it was a murder. But how could that be? How can someone be murdered right in front of everyone's eyes without anyone noticing the killer? Unless the murderer wasn't human, it was something far more terrifying. Something supernatural was hiding in plain sight, watching us all. This incident happened long ago in a small, isolated village. Around that time, there weren't many roads or vehicles in that place. Mobile phones hadn't become common yet, and the only way to contact someone was either through letters or by going to the person yourself. The village was surrounded by endless farm fields, and there was only one narrow road that led into the village. In that village lived a man named Kemal. He had a wife and 2 children, a little boy and a girl, but his family was far from happy. Kemal was a heavy drinker. Every night he would come home drunk, staggering through the door. He would beat his wife for no reason, and if the children tried to stop him, he'd beat them too. One night Kemal came home drunk again, but this time it was far worse. His rage was brutal, monstrous. He grabbed a wooden stick and started hitting his wife mercilessly. The sound of the stick striking her flesh echoed through the house. Her skin split open, bleeding, and she screamed in agony, her cries piercing the silence of the night. The neighbors, who had tolerated this cruelty for far too long, couldn't stand it anymore. They rushed in to stop him, but as they restrained him, Kemal suddenly broke free, stormed into the kitchen, and grabbed a knife. Everyone thought he would attack someone, but to their horror, he turned the blade on himself. He sliced open his own throat in front of everyone. Blood gushed out, splattering the floor. Then, with a sickening, bone-chilling movement, he inserted both of his index fingers into the wound and began tearing his own throat apart. As if he was trying to rip his own head off, a twisted, guttural grin formed on his face as blood poured down. His wife screamed and collapsed unconscious on the floor. The neighbors froze in terror, their legs trembling. Unable to bear the sight, they fled to call for help. But when the police came, they couldn't do anything. It was a clear suicide. So the villagers buried Kemal's body in the graveyard. But that graveyard, it was right beside the only road people used to enter and leave the village. Only the villagers who had witnessed that horrifying night knew what had truly happened. Those who were away for work or other reasons had no idea what awaited them on their return. 2 days passed. A man named Hanif was returning home from work. It was around 10 p.m., but in that village, 10 p.m. was as dark and silent as 1 a.m. The road was nearly pitch black, and there were barely any lights around. The graveyard section of the road was the darkest of all. As Hanif walked past the graveyard, he saw someone sitting there alone. His heart skipped a beat. But then he thought, it must be Kemal. Only a drunk like him would sit at the graveyard this late at night. Hanif called out, "Kemal, it's very late. Let me take you home." But Kemal didn't move. He just sat there with his head hanging low, completely still. Thinking Kemal might be too drunk to respond, Hanif walked closer and placed his hand on Kemal's shoulder. The moment he touched him, Kemal slowly lifted his head. What Hanif saw froze his blood cold. Kemal's face was twisted into an evil smile. His eyes were completely white, no pupils, no humanity. Blood dripped steadily from the deep cut in his throat. Hanif stumbled back, fell to the ground, and began shaking uncontrollably. But the nightmare wasn't over. Kemal slowly stood up, inserted his fingers into his bloody throat again, and began pulling it apart, trying to separate his head from his body. A raspy, chilling laugh echoed through the graveyard. Hanif screamed and ran for his life, not daring to look back. As he ran, that terrifying laughter grew louder behind him, echoing through the dark. He reached the nearest house, banged on the door with trembling hands, and then collapsed unconscious. The family living there rushed outside and found Hanif lying on their doorstep. They called his family and he was carried home. When he regained consciousness, he told them everything. But his wife's face turned pale. "Kemal died a few days ago," she whispered. She told him about the suicide. Hanif's blood ran cold. Then who had he seen at the graveyard that night? From that day on, strange and terrifying incidents began happening at that graveyard. People who passed that way at night came back shaken, if they came back at all. Nobody dared use that road alone after dark. To protect the villagers, some young men formed groups and set up camps on both sides of the graveyard road to escort anyone who had to pass through at night. One night, a man named Akbar was returning home from the city. He had bought groceries and other necessities. He was riding his bicycle and had hired a rickshaw to carry his goods. The rickshaw driver, however, didn't know about the graveyard's dark past. It was around 10 or 11 p.m. The night was thick and quiet. As they neared the graveyard, Akbar's bicycle chain suddenly slipped. He stopped to fix it and shouted for the rickshaw driver to wait, but the man didn't hear him. He kept going. The rickshaw entered the darkest part of the road, the graveyard stretch. That night, the young men who usually escorted people weren't there. They were holding a meeting about the situation. The driver slowed down, uneasy. Suddenly, he saw a figure walking down the middle of the road. He pressed the horn again and again. No response. The figure didn't move. Annoyed, the driver got off the rickshaw and walked toward the man to confront him. He grabbed the figure's shoulder and turned him around, and then his blood froze. It was Kemal. Blood oozed from the deep cut on his throat. His eyes were pure white, glowing faintly in the darkness. A horrible, rotten smell filled the air, and pieces of skin hung loose from his neck. The creature laughed, but it wasn't a human laugh. It was low, broken, like a scream dragged through a nightmare. The sound shook the night itself. The rickshaw driver screamed louder than he ever had in his life and fainted on the spot. The young men, hearing the scream from their meeting, rushed to the road and found the driver lying unconscious near the graveyard. Moments later, Akbar arrived and saw the terrifying scene. The villagers took the driver in and kept him safe that night. But the next morning, he left the village and never came back. That was the breaking point. The villagers decided this can't continue anymore. They sought out a powerful exorcist. Eventually, they found a well-known imam, someone known to deal with supernatural matters. After hearing the villagers' story, the imam agreed to help. He told them he would come to the village the next day. That night, however, the imam spoke to his jinn companions to learn more. What they told him sent chills down his spine. They said, Kemal's death wasn't a normal suicide, it was a murder. The imam was stunned. What do you mean? Explain. The jinns revealed the truth. That night, Kemal had been drinking under a massive old tree outside the village. No one ever went near that tree at night, but Kemal, drunk and reckless, went there. Unfortunately, that tree was home to a powerful evil jinn, a creature that worshipped the devil Lucifer. The jinn was performing a dark ritual that night. Kemal's drunken yelling disrupted the ritual. Furious, the jinn possessed Kemal's body, controlled him, and forced him to beat his wife. Then, under the jinn's control, Kemal brutally killed himself. After his death, the evil jinn captured Kemal's Kareen jinn, a spirit that every human is born with. Kareen jinns don't harm or help. They only observe their human host throughout life. But once a person dies, their Kareen becomes vulnerable. The evil jinn seized Kemal's Kareen and twisted it into something horrifying, using it to terrify the villagers. The next night, the imam arrived at the village. He gathered the villagers and explained everything. They begged him to end this nightmare. The imam agreed. That night, in a dark, silent room, he began the ritual to summon the evil jinn. A few villagers stood by him, holding their breath. The air grew heavy. The wind outside roared violently, howling through the trees. The house trembled as if something enormous circled it. A horrible rotting stench filled the room. Then a deep, cracked voice echoed from nowhere. "Why did you call me here? I was performing a ritual for my lord Lucifer. How dare you interrupt me?" The imam replied calmly, "You made me call you here. If you hadn't terrorized these villagers, I wouldn't have summoned you." The voice grew louder, angrier. "I can kill you all right now and leave this place." The imam laughed lightly. "Try it, you evil creature." Then he began reciting verses from Quran, his voice steady and powerful. The jinn screamed, "Stop it, or I'll kill you." But the imam didn't stop. His words grew stronger, sharper. The jinn's voice started to shake as if it was in pain. Finally, it howled. "Enough. You win. I can't take it anymore. Let me go. I will release his Kareen. But tell your people never to come near that tree at night." The imam agreed, and the jinn vanished, leaving only silence behind. From that night on, Kemal's ghost was never seen again. But even today, villagers say that when the wind howls through the trees near that graveyard, if you listen carefully, You might still hear that ghastly laugh. And if you're brave or foolish enough to walk by that old tree at night, you may just find out what's waiting there.